Now we will start our next lesson. As the last lesson was in the key of G, we're going to play the notes in the key of F with the F major scale. In the key of G, we had one sharp, and that was F sharp. In the key of F, this is the first key that we're learning with a note that is flatted, and the note is B flat. So every time we come to the note B that's written in the staff, since we have a B flat on the key signature, we will always play a B flat, unless stated with a natural sign. So if we know, let's just go through this. If we know the key of C, the key of F, we'll start on the note F. We'll play F, G, A. B flat is the third finger on the third string, third fret. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. F, G, A, B flat. Now the lower octave will go down the scale. F, E, D, C, B flat, first finger, first fret, fifth string, A, G, F, B flat. So now we'll play F scale from low F to our higher F, 2 octaves, B flat. Back down. Our first exercise in the key of F on top of page 35. Key of F major, first position. First position meaning we're playing everything with our first, in the first fret with our first finger, second, second, third, third, fourth, fourth. The only note that we didn't play in reviewing the F scale is the note G on the first string with your third finger in this exercise. 1, 2, 3, 4. B flat. Next, we have rhythm accompaniment. In the next chords, we're using some bar. A grand bar is when you put a finger across all 6 strings, as in F7. We put our first finger right across the first fret and add our other fingers. In the chord diagram stated, you could also use your 4th finger here. But right now, let's just play the F7 with... For me to do a bar, I do not rest my first finger flat on this part of the finger in the fret. I rest a little on the side of the first finger so I can get the notes ringing better. It's hard for me like to just... I guess I can do it, but it's much easier and more efficient to do it on the side of the finger. B flat chord has a partial bar. not a grand bar, just barring the third finger against the second, third, and fourth strings of the third fret while adding the note B flat. And C9 has our third finger playing the first three strings, then adding we know C7, and if we look at C7 and C9, we're playing, here's C7, here's C9, but we're adding the note D and putting G in there. C7, C9. Here's the exercise. 1, 2, 3, 4. C7. Now F7. B flat. C9. F. If you can't get the switching, try playing whole notes. Just one strum per measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you can go half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and then progress into 1, 2, 3, 4. Always think about the next chord you're going to. I'm thinking F7 now. I'm thinking B flat. What do I have to do? C9, I hardly have to move. And back to the F chord. At the bottom of the page, we're adding G minor to our repertoire of chords. 3, 3, 3, 2. The first three strings, G, D, B flat, and the low note G. There are other ways to play these chords, and they're always really determined on where we're coming from and where we're going to. So we need a repertoire of different ways to play many of our chords. So D minor in the first measure. We're going to play this G minor, as stated. A7. Then we're playing D minor like this for two beats, and then D minor with the open D. So this goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can not only practice this as 4/4. I mean, if you have some way of you want to do a different type of rhythm, just to practice these chords, that would be fine. The main thing is just switching it on time. Since we introduced the F major scale and the key of F, definitely we're going to have to do a duet in the key of F. So on page 36, duet in F. Remember, all B's are flatted. Part 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. part one, actually this whole duet really is an ABA form. Our A, that theme, and it continues on for 8 measures. Then we have the B section for 4 measures. Then we're back to for 8 measures, and we have our ending. Let's look at part one. In addition to playing it in the key of F, we do have an accidental of G sharp in the second measure. So the first 2 measures. Here you probably would recognize this chord because it's part of an F chord that we've played like this, like this. It's this. So it's, then we have an F sharp to that chord. So we're not lifting up our first 2 fingers in the third measure. We're going C, little F chord, C, F sharp, C. Actually, we're keeping our first finger on C for that both those 2 measures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. The other place where we hold down a note, it's actually 3 measures, is on the third line. We're holding C down. Those 3 measures, and the next measure we have a B natural. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure those notes are held long. The last measure of that line, we have a B natural on the and of 1. Notice we don't have any sign in front of the next B. Since it's in the same measure, it's still a B natural. And now it's your time to play part 1. Part 2. One, 2, 3, 4. To me, the hardest part in part 2 is the third measure. You're coming in on the end of 1, and you're doing an upstroke on F, E, D, C, A, F sharp, D. You might have to practice first 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3. And the next part, from 3 and 4 and, down on C, A, F sharp, G sharp. Three, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. And make sure that you make a connection from D sharp to E, because that's really where the phrase ends. And then we have a number of these phrases that go into another note. chromatically. This D sharp to E, the A to B flat, the last note on the first line going to the first note on the second line. Actually, this whole phrase. The third measure going into the fourth measure of the second line. You shouldn't be playing. It should be smoothly right into that last note F. Now it's your turn to practice part 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the last lesson, we learned about 16th notes. There are 4 16th notes in a beat. Now we're going to play triplets. There are 3 triplets in a beat. Here's our tempo. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. We can also say 1 triplet, 2 triplet. However you get those 3 notes in that evenly in that one beat. And you can also play it with a pick motion of all alternate, or you can play it down, up, down, down, up, down. Right now I prefer down, up, down, down, up, down. Why? Because I would like a downstroke on every beat, on every downbeat. There would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can feel that triplet really well. So if we look at the top of the page, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Or we could play it with alternate picking. I would pick the triplets right now, down, up, down, down, up, down. So we're always have a downstroke on the downbeat. Now let's play the exercise. One, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to play a solo in F. As you see, it says waltz in F. If you look at the key signature, there's a B flat in it. Yes, we are in the key of F, F major. We're using notes from the F major scale, unless we have a natural sharp or another flat sign. We're playing everything in the key of F. The other thing is the time signature. If you notice, we have 3/4. A waltz gets 3 beats. So we have 3 beats per measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. The other thing that happens is that we have 2 notes before the double bar line there. It says notes appearing before the beginning measure are called pickups. So here we have 2 pickup notes. And then the first measure. How do you know it's the first measure? Because you see a double bar there. Also, you also know that it's the first measure because you see there are full 3 beats in that measure. The pickup notes are 2 beats. So that's really not a first complete measure. Those are 2 pickup notes before the first measure. Waltz in F. Just about the tempo of this tune, I'm taking it at a moderately slow tempo till we get to the 4th line where it has R-A-L-L, meaning rallentando, meaning slow down. And then odd tempo in that next measure, the last measure on that 4th line, odd tempo meaning back to the original tempo. So I went. Also, notice how I played the note D in the 4th measure of the 4th line on the 3rd beat. That D, I'm making sure that it's connected to that. I didn't play. I made sure I played. Notice that's really going right into that little F chord. There are a number of problems here that you have to work out before you can play this in tempo. First of all, getting the chords. Let's take the chord on each of the first beats on the first line. So I would practice going. For information, these are really all F chords with a different top note on it. It's an F chord, and then what we have is an F6, and then we have an F major 7. So we're hearing that chord, tonality F, throughout that whole line. Notice how I want those chords to ring out. The next line we have on the 2nd measure, small F chord. When I'm playing that A, I'm already getting the C and the F with my first finger. Then, nice chord, huh? holding that B flat. So the last measure of the second line needs to be connected to the first measure of the third line. A little C7 chord, C sharp, and then part of a C9 chord. Still key. Throughout that line, most of the time I have my fourth finger on D. On this chord, the second measure, going to the next measure, going to the B flat chord, and the next measure. So it sounds like this. Hold that A, hold a G sharp. That F chord again, small F, get the E flat, right? Then notice really I'm holding a chord that you will learn in a little while, the B flat major 7. B natural. You've played this chord before. Make sure you get the F with your fourth finger. Every major key has a relative minor key. On page 39, as Bill has written here, the sixth degree, or note, of any major scale is the tonic, first note of its relative minor. The major and relative minor key signatures are the same. And then it goes on to say there are 3 different scales in each minor key. So what does that mean? That means in the key of C, if we go to the sixth degree or sixth note, C, D, E, F, G, A, that is the first note of the relative minor scale. And we could play it. So we're playing the C scale, but we're starting on the sixth degree. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And we can go to actually all the way up to this new note, A, on the 5th fret, first string, played with your fourth finger. So if we play that A minor scale, using all the notes from the C scale, we call that A natural minor. So that's the first A natural minor scale, all notes exactly the same as its relative major, C major. That exercise. Going to the A with your fourth finger on the first string on the 5th fret, you would play G with your second finger, so you're switching. Instead of going, which isn't that bad, but it's good to get your hand moving and coming back. A natural minor. Our next one is a harmonic minor, which means that the 7th degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, is raised up a half step. So instead of G, you have G sharp. that may sound familiar to you. So this exercise And next we have the melodic minor scale. The melodic minor scale has a 6th and 7th degree raised going up, so we're hearing this. And playing the natural minor coming down. So we have So going up, we're sharpening it. Coming down, it's natural. Every major scale that we learn, we're going to find and play its relative minor. And then after that, we'll play the natural minor, the harmonic minor, and the melodic minor. In the next section of this page, we're doing more a rhythm accompaniment, or chords. And let me just read what it says here. We now begin to observe that chords have more than one fingering. More than one fingering, more than one way to play the chord, and after a while, more than many places to play the chord. The choice of which one to use generally depends upon the chord fingerings that immediately precede and or follow the chord. We're always making decisions when we're playing chords of what chord we want to go to from another and which one we want to voice lead or play the closest chord form. In this next exercise, we have a set of larger diagrams of chords and smaller diagrams of chords. The way to practice this exercise is to play the larger diagrams first going to one another, then play the smaller diagrams going to one another. So I'm going to play, our first A chord will be the larger diagram, going to the E7, going to the A7, going to the D, and then D minor, and then we play. If you notice, the larger diagrams on the first line all incorporate higher notes. We can hear da, 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 da. So it sounds like this. The optional fingering uses more open strings. 1, 2, 3, 4. No one way to play a chord is better than another. It always depends on the situation. We are now going to play the next two pages, page 40 and 41, Pretty Pickin' Duet. It is an exercise of skipping strings with alternate picking. Here's part 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is a long piece to have alternate picking and skipping strings. It's very hard to play this piece being tense. The main thing is trying to keep your hands relaxed. The way to prepare for the first part is to look at the top of the page. It says chord preparation. We have and those are really the arpeggios that you have happening in the first part. The first measure of the chord preparation is, and the first four measures in the part one is the exact chords. So the main thing is to prepare for the whole measure when you're playing each measure. In other words, we're keeping this in mind, the first chord as we play. And the next chord is, so we keep this and we hold all the notes. The next one is, next one is, make sure, unless you have a natural sign, all the Fs are sharped in this. We're in the key of G. Also, this is a waltz, 3 beats in each measure. Trying to make everything legato again and trying to get the picking alternate with skipping strings. A very difficult thing to do, so it takes a while to do this. We're having enough exercises that while you're going from one exercise to another, hopefully it's getting stronger. And I do suggest that you go back and play the other exercises that have this type of picking. The form of the piece. We have somewhat of a roadmap here like we did on page 28 and 29 in that duet. What we do is we play first page, page 40, into the second page, page 41, till it says DC al coda. Again, DC al coda means go back to the beginning and play till you come to the sign that's called the coda. So you go and play page 40 again, play the first 2 measures on page 41 where it has the coda sign and it says al coda, meaning to jump to the coda, which are the last 4 measures of the piece at the bottom of the page. So we play through page 40 to the first 3 lines of page 41, come back to the beginning, go to the first 2 measures of page 41, drop to the bottom of the page. That's the form. In addition, we also have some dynamic markings of how loud to play this. One is crescendo and one is diminuendo. In the first line we have crescendo, meaning getting louder, and in the second line we have diminuendo, and then we have the crescendo and diminuendo throughout the piece. Practice without getting louder and softer first to get control, and then try to emphasize getting louder and softer and making the piece musical. Now it's your turn to practice part 1. Here is part 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Part 2 doesn't have as much picking in it, but you have to count. You have your regular quarter notes. Make sure you're in the key of G, F sharps, and then we have an F natural in the last measure on the first line. It is easier to get a crescendo when you have notes going up. That is a natural crescendo. So I try and start softer. Now this next measure on the second line, play the G and the E flat together. First finger on A, B flat, third finger on B to C. So it goes. On the first line of the second page, we have little C and E together, F sharp on D, little D7 chord, G chord, downstroke, rest stroke. Prepare, B flat, C sharp, E, then 3 and 4. B flat, C sharp, E, B and D. Again, that B flat, C sharp, E. Hold those notes. 1, 2, 3. Again, remember the form, and remember to crescendo and diminuendo. Use those techniques to get louder and softer. You might have noticed that I've been trying to get the melody stronger and to ring more, so I will sometimes play vibrato, shaking. Making sure that the notes are coming out and they're emphasized. That is a technique that if I want to have a melody really strong and melodic and legato, I will just shake my finger to side quickly and I'll get a vibrato, which it just won't be a long note coming out. It'll be a da. It'll be ringing and vibrating, and it gives it a different sound and expression. Now your turn to practice part 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is the last exercise of this lesson. So after you practice this second part, we will start on a new lesson. be sure you review everything and play everything slowly again, and go back to other lessons periodically to review. If you have any problems in this lesson, maybe it means that you should be reviewing some of the previous lessons. In this lesson, we will start on page 42, dotted 8th and 16th notes. It's a good thing to review 16th note first. Remember, 16th note, we'll take the note G as it has on the first exercise 1, but let's just play quarter notes first. Right, 8th notes. 16th. Notice I'm still doing rest strokes, so I know where my pick is. I'm not doing this. In fact, I'm not doing it because I will miss the note. Rest strokes. I'm doing rest strokes. So now, let's review what we know about a dot after a note. Remember, we said that a dot after a note adds to that note another half value of that note. In other words, let's not talk abstractly, let's talk about specific. A dotted half note means that we have 2 beats plus half of that 1 beat, so that note would get 3 beats. A dotted quarter note would be 1 beat plus half of that, a half a beat, which would be a beat and a half. A dotted eighth would be a half a beat plus a half of that, which would be like a 16th note, a quarter of a beat, so it would be 3/4 of a beat. So if we're doing 16th notes, 8th notes, dotted eighth, 16th, dotted eighth. Practice this by just turning the metronome on and going back and forth between 16th note, 8th note, dotted eighth to a 16th note. 8th note. I'll play exercise 1 now. Exercise 1 consists of those 16th notes, dotted eighth going to a 16th, and a few 8th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 3, 4. If you're having problems counting that, you could actually count it twice as fast and make them 8th notes going to dotted quarter notes like this. First it was 1, 2, 3, 4. You could do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you could count it half as fast. 1, 2, and so on. Let me play you now exercise 2. Notice it says slowly on each of these exercises. You need to count it slowly so that you can concentrate on playing the 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. The second beat of the first measure is actually opposite of what we were playing before. We were playing a dotted eighth and 16th. This is a 16th to a dotted eighth, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, also in the last measure, we have the B. We have that rhythm, 2 16th notes and an eighth. Then we have 16th, 8th, 16th. So that goes, those two beats are 1, 2, 3, 4. The whole measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, if you're having problems counting and subdividing the beat, we could double the time, play twice as fast, and count the 16th notes as eighth notes instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. We can do 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the next exercise that we have is something that it's an illustration on how people play lines with a swing rhythm. I'll read this to you and then I'll explain my take on it. Note that the above strict or legitimate interpretation of dotted eighth and 16th notes produces a rather jerky rhythm. And I agree with that. In pop music and jazz, they are played more legato, smoothly, in a flowing manner. I would call it more relaxed. This is done by treating them as triplets. So instead of playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, that's how we were playing it. And now I will play the G as triplets. And this gives the so-called swing feel that we feel. It's a more, shall I call it, more relaxed way of playing the dotted eighth 16th. So let me play exercise 3 and you'll hear it better. 1, 2, 3, 4. I will play it at strict dotted eighth 16th, the last line. This is a way to get the swing feel of eighth notes that happens in a number of swing tunes. So we have something sounding like straight eighth notes, swing feel. We will come across this feel a number of times in this book, and we'll be going over that again.